Listen, I don't care what your propaganda feeds are telling you back home. Humans aren't just resilient or tenacious. Those pink squishy bastards are absolutely insane, Kazatik said, mandibles clicking anxiously as he downed his third glass of fermented nectar. The fluid glowed an unnatural blue in the dim light of the veteran's bar. Across the table, the young reporter, fresh scales still gleaming with that annoying sheen of academy polish, blinked all four eyes in rapid succession. Surely the stories are exaggerated for entertainment value. Veteran third rank? I couldn't help but laugh, a gurgling sound that made several patrons at nearby tables swivel their sensory appendages in our direction. The kid had no idea what he was asking. None of them did, the ones who hadn't been there. You think I got these scars from training exercises? I gestured to the missing segment of my carapace, where the regrown section never quite matched the original coloration. Let me tell you something about humans, kid. Their entire evolutionary history is just one long series of hold my beer moments. The reporter's recording device hummed softly as it hovered between us, its passive sensors capturing every word, gesture, and pheromone shift for the audience back home. I'd agreed to this interview for one reason only. The truth needed to be told. The Galactic Federation had classified most of the details about the Sol conflict, and I was frankly tired of hearing the sanitized version. Start at the beginning, the reporter prompted, settling back into a more comfortable posture. You were one of the first scouts assigned to Earth reconnaissance, correct? I chittered in confirmation. Initial observation team. We were supposed to stay undetected for a standard cycle, gather intel on their military capabilities, social structures, resource utilization, the usual pre-contact checklist. But something went wrong? Wrong? No. I waved a limb dismissively. Everything went according to protocol. That was the problem. Protocol doesn't account for humans. 13 cycles earlier. Approaching target system, Commander. Lieutenant Vexina's voice carried the crisp efficiency of recent academy training. Standard stealth protocols engaged. We are running dark. I acknowledged with a flick of my primary antenna and studied the holographic display. Sol system. Unremarkable G-type main sequence star, 8 planets, 1 habitable. Textbook stuff. The planet-designated Sol 3 hung in the projection, swirling blues and whites spinning slowly on its axis. Bioscans detecting multiple civilization centers, heavy industrial activity, atmospheric modification. Science Officer Grill reported, manipulating the data streams with practiced precision. Definitely a Class 4 civilization, sir. Pre-FTL but post-nuclear. Curious, I mused, zooming the display to focus on the sprawling metropolitan areas. Their population centers seem remarkably haphazard. Captain Drelk, a grizzled veteran of numerous first-contact scenarios, flared his gill membranes in what I recognized as amusement. That's typical of younger species, Commander. No central planning committee. They just build wherever they want. Inefficient, I noted. But indicative, Drelk countered. Shows independence of thought. Those are the species you need to watch carefully. How right he was. If only we'd watched more carefully. We established our observation post on Sol 3's satellite, the Moon, as humans called it. A desolate, airless rock that provided perfect cover for our stealth arrays. From there, we began the standard observation protocol, tapping into their primitive electromagnetic communications network. Sir, you should see this. Intelligence analyst Zeev looked perturbed, his scales shifting to a troubled shade of mauve. What is it, analyst? I've been monitoring their global information channels. They call it the Internet. Sir, they're fighting. Constantly. I chittered in confusion. You mean they're at war? No, sir. I mean they argue. About everything. Look at this. He projected a series of what humans called comment sections into the air between us. These humans have never met each other. Will never meet each other. Yet they engage in aggressive verbal combat over the quality of a recorded audio entertainment sequence. A song, Captain Drelk supplied helpfully. They call it music. Whatever it is, Zeev continued, they're threatening reproductive violations upon each other's maternal figures over disagreements about it. I studied the exchanges with growing bewilderment. This makes no tactical sense. Why expend energy on conflict with no possibility of territorial or resource gain? Captain Drelk's membrane flared again. Entertainment, Commander. They find it amusing. They find conflict amusing? The concept was alien to me. In Tiscrete society, conflict was a last resort, engaged in only when all diplomatic options had been exhausted, and then executed with maximum efficiency to minimize resource expenditure. Humans are different, Drelk said, in what would prove to be the understatement of the cycle. Over the following rotation periods, we observed human behavior with increasing concern. Their entertainment broadcasts were particularly troubling, endless simulations of combat, disaster, and conflict scenarios. They called them movies and video games. Sir? Tactical Officer Morrell interrupted my contemplation one shift. I've been analyzing their military capabilities as ordered. And? Sir, they're inefficient. Their planetary defense forces are fragmented into competing factions they call countries. They actively work against each other. So they would be easy to subdue if hostile? I asked, thinking ahead to the Federation's interest in potentially valuable resources on Sol 3. Morell's hesitation was concerning. Not exactly, sir. While fragmented, their combined military spending and technological development is excessive. Excessive how? Sir, they've engineered weapons specifically designed to kill other humans in dozens of different ways. They have bombs that could render their entire planet uninhabitable. They've developed chemical agents whose sole purpose is to cause maximum suffering before death. I blinked all eyes simultaneously. But they haven't unified against external threats? No external threats have presented themselves, sir. Then why? Because they're insane, Captain Drelk interrupted, joining our conversation. They developed these weapons to use against each other. The implications settled over me like a toxic fog. A species that developed planet-killing weapons for use against their own kind? What would such a species do when confronted with an actual external threat? There's more, sir, Zeev added, his scales now a sickly yellow. I've been analyzing their historical records. They've been at near constant war throughout their recorded history. Not just between major power blocks, but hundreds, thousands of individual conflicts. Over resources? I asked, trying to make sense of it. Sometimes territory, sometimes ideology, sometimes... He paused, seemingly embarrassed. Because one human insulted another human's choice of mate. You're joking. I wish I were, sir. They have a documented case where millions died because an heir to a power block was assassinated after a wrong turn by his transport vehicle driver. Captain Drelk made a sound I'd never heard from him before. Something between a laugh and a wheeze. And that's why we're observing from a distance, Commander. Standard protocol with species this volatile is minimal contact until they either mature or self-destruct. Our observation continued, and with each passing day, my unease grew. The humans were a bundle of contradictions. They created art of breathtaking beauty and devised torture methods of stomach-turning cruelty. They sacrificed themselves for strangers and murdered each other over trivial disputes. They built incredible machines to extend their short lifespans, then used those same lifespans engaging in behaviors they knew would shorten them. Recreational poison consumption, Medical Officer Plitt explained, showing me footage of humans willingly ingesting ethanol. They know it damages their cellular structures, yet they do it anyway. For fun. But why? It temporarily alters their neurochemistry. Makes them feel good, I suppose. I couldn't comprehend it. The concept of deliberately impairing one's own faculties for enjoyment was utterly foreign to my species' efficiency-focused mindset. Then came the day everything changed. Commander! Lieutenant Vexina's voice cut through the quiet hum of the observation post, pitched higher than normal. We have a situation. I was at her station in 3 strides. Report. Sir, we've detected an anomaly in their orbital debris field. Something just changed course. Changed course? Space debris doesn't change course, Lieutenant. This did, sir, and it's heading directly toward our position. Captain Drelk joined us, his usual calm demeanor betrayed by the rapid pulsing of his throat sac. Show me. The tactical display highlighted a small object, barely larger than a personal transport pod, adjusting its trajectory with tiny bursts of chemical propellant. It's one of their primitive satellites, Tactical Officer Morrell reported. But it's been modified. There are cameras, sensors. Sir, I think it's an inspection drone. Impossible, I stated flatly. Their space technology is decades away from that kind of capability. With respect, Commander, Zeev interjected. You're thinking like a tskrit. Humans don't wait for perfection. They just do things. Stealth systems, I asked. Fully operational, sir, Vexna confirmed. They shouldn't be able to detect us. Shouldn't, Captain Drelk repeated grimly. But this species specializes in doing what they shouldn't. As we watched, the human device continued its approach, making minute course corrections that brought it ever closer to our position. Sir, Zeev said quietly, I've been intercepting their communications. This is from something called NASA Mission Control. He activated a translation matrix, and a human voice filled our command center. Orbital adjustment complete. Hermes probe approaching anomalous gravitational reading. All sensors active. If there's something up there pretending to be empty space, we're going to find it. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Captain Drelk did something unprecedented. He laughed. A full-throated, gill-flaring laugh. Magnificent, he wheezed between bursts. Absolutely magnificent. Less than a century of space travel, and they're already hunting ghosts. Sir, I reminded him, if they detect us, it would violate first contact protocols. The Federation— Oh, they won't detect us, Drelk interrupted, suddenly serious again. But the fact that they're looking, that tells us everything we need to know about humans. He turned to tactical. Initiate emergency relocation. Move the observation post to the far side of their satellite. Maintain stealth protocols. We executed the maneuver flawlessly, our advanced drive systems leaving no trace as we shifted position. The human probe passed through the space we'd occupied moments before, its primitive sensors detecting nothing but normal vacuum. But the incident changed something in our mission parameters. The humans weren't just subjects of observation anymore. They were actively looking for us, for anything beyond their world. And if history had taught us anything, humans tended to find what they looked for eventually. Captain, I said as we resumed normal operations, I believe we should report this development to Fleet Command. Drelk considered for a moment, then nodded. Draft the communication commander. Flag it priority level 2. Only level 2, sir? The incident seemed far more significant to me. Trust me, Commander. I've been doing this for 30 cycles. Species like humans. The Federation has seen them before. They either blow themselves up or they grow up. Either way, it's not our problem. I should have argued harder. I should have insisted on a full evacuation. I should have recognized the pattern that was forming. But I didn't. None of us did. 3 rotation periods later, everything went to hell. Wait, the young reporter interrupted, setting down his drink. You're telling me humans detected your stealth technology? That should have been impossible for a pre-FTL civilization. I clicked my mandibles in irritation. Kid, that's the recurring theme of this entire story. Humans doing what should have been impossible. And no, they didn't detect us directly. But they suspected. That's the thing about humans. They don't need proof to take action. Just suspicion. So what happened next? I signaled the bartender for another round. This was the part of the story I hated telling. What happened next? Human curiosity met discreet bureaucracy, and the result was a nightmare. Our observation team continued monitoring Earth for another 46 rotation periods. The humans' Hermes probe eventually returned to its original orbit, but we noticed increased activity in their space programs afterward. More satellites with scanning equipment. More focused radio telescope activity aimed at our new position. They're looking for us, Zeev insisted during a briefing. Not specifically us, but something. Their entertainment broadcasts have shifted toward themes of extraterrestrial contact. Correlation doesn't imply causation, Science Officer Greel countered. Humans have been obsessed with the concept of alien life for generations. But the timing is coincidental, Captain Drelk said firmly. Continue standard observation protocols. The response from Fleet Command to our report had been predictably bureaucratic. Maintain position. Continue observation. Avoid detection. No additional resources, no evacuation timeline adjustment. Just business as usual. Until it wasn't. The alert came during third shift, when most of the crew was in rest cycle. I was in the command center, reviewing sensor logs when the proximity alarm blared. Multiple objects approaching! Lieutenant Vexna announced, rushing to her station. Chemical propulsion signatures, human origin. On screen, I ordered, summoning the skeleton crew to battle stations out of an abundance of caution. The tactical display showed 3 objects rising from Earth's atmosphere on ballistic trajectories. Not satellites, not scientific instruments, missiles, Tactical Officer Merle stated flatly. Primitive nuclear delivery systems. Target? I demanded, already knowing the answer. They're on course for our position, Commander. Captain Drelk burst into the command center, his sleep membrane still retracting from his tertiary eyes. Report. Humans have launched nuclear weapons toward our position, sir. Impact in approximately 17 minutes. Drelk's scales paled. Are we detected? Negative, sir, Vexna reported. Our stealth systems are functioning normally. But they're firing anyway. I finished for her. On suspicion alone. Drelk stared at the tactical display, his expression unreadable. Options? We can intercept the missiles with point defense, Morel suggested. Or relocate again. Interception would confirm our presence, I pointed out, violating first contact protocols. And if we do nothing? Drelk asked quietly. Morel's answer was clinical. Our shields can withstand the primitive nuclear detonations, but the energy signature would be visible from Earth. They would know something was here. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. No matter what we did, the humans would have confirmation that they weren't alone in the universe. First contact protocols would be violated. Sir, Communications Officer Tsin broke the silence. I'm receiving an emergency transmission from Fleet Command. Now? Drelk's surprise was evident. Put it through. The holographic display shifted to show Admiral Vikhurst, his formal battle carapace gleaming with rank insignia. As if to punctuate his statement, the ship's AI announced, FTL drive spooled, ready for emergency jump in 30 seconds. I looked at the tactical display one last time. The nuclear missiles were 12 minutes from impact. Behind them, Earth continued its serene rotation. Billions of humans going about their lives, unaware that their species had just been deemed too dangerous for contact by the galactic community. 20 seconds to jump, the AI intoned. Captain Drelk placed a hand on my shoulder. It's not your fault, Commander. You did your duty, filed accurate reports. The Council made its decision based on the facts. Facts without context, I muttered. We never gave them a chance. 10 seconds. I watched the blue-green planet grow smaller on the display. 5 seconds. The missiles continued their implacable approach to where we wouldn't be. Jump initiated. Reality twisted, stars smeared, and Earth vanished as we tore a hole in space-time and fled. We emerged from FTL 3 days later at Federation Outpost 227, where we learned what happened after our departure. The automated containment platforms had deployed successfully, forming a blockade around the Sol system. Any human spacecraft attempting to leave Earth orbit would be destroyed without warning. The nuclear missiles we'd fled had detonated in empty space, confirming to humanity that something had been there, something that had run away. You baited a prideful, warlike species, then slapped them with restrictions they don't understand, I argued during the debriefing. This will not end well. Admiral Vikhurst dismissed my concerns. The containment field is impenetrable to their level of technology. They have an entire planet to occupy them. In time, they'll forget about the stars. I didn't believe it for a second. I'd spent too long studying humans to think they would ever just accept limitations. I was right. The first containment platform went offline 3 standard years later. Federation technicians attributed it to a micrometeorite strike, an astronomical fluke. When the second platform went dark 6 months after that, coincidence became suspicious. By the time the third and fourth platforms were destroyed within weeks of each other, the Federation Council was forced to acknowledge the truth. Humanity was fighting back. Impossible, was the common refrain among the Admiralty. Their technology is centuries behind ours. But they didn't understand what I had learned during my observation mission. Humans didn't play by the rules. They didn't develop technology in the orderly, methodical way the Federation expected. They leapfrogged. They jury-rigged. They cobbled together solutions that had no business working, but somehow did. I volunteered to join the Containment Reinforcement Fleet. Not out of loyalty to the Federation's misguided policy, but because I needed to see for myself what humanity was doing. What I found in the Sol system changed me forever. The reporter leaned forward, all 4 eyes wide with interest. Is that when the actual conflict began? I drained my 4th glass of nectar, mandibles clicking against the rim. Kid, the conflict began the moment we ran away. We just didn't know it yet. And you were there for the first battle? Battle? I laughed bitterly. That implies both sides had a fighting chance. What happened in the Sol system wasn't a battle. It was a wake-up call. Our reinforcement fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system with overwhelming force. 7 capital ships, each capable of reducing a planet's surface to molten slag, accompanied by their escort groups. Standard intimidation protocol for dealing with containment breaches. Show of force, re-establish the perimeter, return home for commendations. Fleet Admiral XR supervised the operation personally, his massive dreadnought, Inevitable Harmony, leading our formation. Deploy scanning array, he ordered as we dropped out of FTL. Let's see what these primitives have been up to. The results were unexpected. Sir, the sensor officer reported, confusion evident in his voice. I'm detecting debris fields where the containment platform should be. Expected, the Admiral dismissed. We already knew they'd been destroyed. Yes, sir, but I'm also detecting artificial structures throughout the system. Hundreds of them. The tactical display updated to show a solar system swarming with activity. Space stations in Earth orbit, habitats around their moon, mining operations on their inner planets, construction facilities in their asteroid belt. This is impossible, someone whispered. Our intelligence said they were pre-FTL. This level of system development would take centuries. Admiral Xer's scales darkened with anger. How long has it been since the observation team left this system? 8 standard years, sir. 8 years, he repeated incredulously. They've accomplished all this in 8 years? I studied the display with growing unease. The human activity wasn't just extensive, it was purposeful, coordinated. Every asteroid habitat, every orbital factory, every installation on Mars and Venus seemed to serve a specific function in a larger whole. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted. "We're receiving a transmission. Origin, Sol 3. They've detected us already?" The Admiral's surprise was evident. "Put it through!" The holographic display flickered, and a human face appeared. Male, by their dimorphic standards, with a close-cropped growth of facial hair and eyes that seemed to burn with intensity even through the transmission. "This is General Alexei Volkov of the United Earth Defense Force. You are entering restricted space. Identify yourselves immediately or face the consequences." The command deck fell silent. The human had spoken Galactic Standard, a language that had never been shared with their species. Admiral Exer recovered quickly. "This is Fleet Admiral Kexier of the Galactic Federation. Your system is under containment protocols by order of the Federation Council. Your species has been deemed too volatile for unrestricted space travel. Return to your homeworld immediately." The human, Volkov, smiled. Not the expression of diplomatic pleasantry I'd observed in human communications, but something predatory. "Dangerous. Admiral, your containment protocols were implemented without provocation, without communication, and without consent. They were also, as you can see, completely ineffective." "You will comply or what?" Volkov interrupted. "You'll destroy our ships? Bombard our colonies?" "Let me be clear, Admiral. The moment your fleet attacked, you would face immediate and overwhelming retaliation." Several officers chittered nervously at the human's audacity. A pre-FTL species threatening a Federation battle fleet? It was absurd. Admiral Xar clearly thought so too. "Your primitive weapons cannot harm our vessels, human. This display of bravado is pointless. Return to your planet, and the Federation will consider revising containment protocols in a mere century or two." Volkov's smile never wavered. "You misunderstand me, Admiral. We are not negotiating. We are informing you of reality." He gestured to someone off-screen, and the transmission view widened to show a strategic display of the Sol system. "Your containment platforms were educational," Volkov continued. "We reverse-engineered quite a bit from the wreckage. Combined with what we salvaged from your observation post on the moon, yes, we found that too. We've made significant technological leaps." I felt a cold dread settling in my abdomen. The observation post had been sterilized before our departure, standard protocol, but the physical structure remained. If they'd found it, studied it. "Furthermore," Volkov continued, "we've taken precautions against further aggression." The strategic display highlighted hundreds of small objects scattered throughout the system. "These are what we call dead man switches, autonomous weapons platforms with a simple directive. If Earth detects an attack, they launch. Their targets include not just your fleet, but the coordinates of every Federation world we extracted from your database." "Impossible," Admiral Xer dismissed. "You don't have FTL capability." "We didn't," Volkov agreed pleasantly, "until we studied your drives. Our versions are crude, inefficient, and have limited range, but they're strapped to weapons with antimatter warheads. One detonation in orbit of a populated world would be problematic for you, wouldn't it?" The command deck erupted in alarmed chitters and hisses. Antimatter weaponry was banned throughout the Federation due to its devastating potential. The idea that humans had not only developed it but deployed it on automated platforms was terrifying. "You're bluffing," Admiral Exor declared, but I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "A reasonable assumption?" Volkov nodded. "So let me offer proof." He typed something on a console before him, and a moment later, our sensors blared warnings. "Energy spike detected!" the tactical officer shouted. "Something just appeared 20,000 kilometers off our port bow." "On screen," Gezer ordered. The display shifted to show a small, crude-looking device floating in space. Even to my untrained eye, it looked cobbled together, inelegant, dangerous. "That," Volkov explained calmly, "is one of our first-generation FTL-capable antimatter torpedoes. Yield equivalent to approximately 300 teratons of your measurement system. Enough to vaporize your entire fleet. It's currently disarmed as a gesture of good faith." No one spoke. No one moved. The implications were staggering. In 8 short years, humans had gone from primitive nuclear missiles to antimatter warheads delivered by FTL. It violated every developmental model in Federation xenosociology databases. "Now," Volkov continued, his voice hardening, "here are our terms. The containment platforms will be removed immediately. The Federation will acknowledge humanity's sovereign right to expand throughout our solar system and beyond. A non-aggression pact will be established and diplomatic relations opened. We are prepared to join your galactic community as equals, Admiral, not as prisoners." Admiral Zier's scales had paled to an ashen gray. The Federation Council must— The Federation Council, Volkov cut him off, sent you here to intimidate us back into our cage. That option is no longer on the table. You have 1 standard hour to begin removing the containment platforms. If you comply, we look forward to peaceful relations. If not— He shrugged, the gesture somehow more menacing for its casualness. We've prepared for that scenario as well. The transmission ended. For several long moments, the command deck remained silent, every officer processing the implications of what we'd just witnessed. Then Admiral Zir turned to his communications officer. Contact Federation Central. Priority Alpha. We need instructions. I stepped forward, unable to remain silent. Sir, with respect, I spent a full cycle observing humans. If they say they've rigged their system with deadman switches, I believe them. If they say they'll retaliate against Federation worlds, I believe that too. Your concern is noted, Commander Tixil, the Admiral replied stiffly. But this decision must come from the Council. The next hour was the longest of my life. Officers huddled in small groups, discussing the situation in hushed tones. Tactical ran continuous scans of the human torpedo, confirming its antimatter signature. Intelligence tried to calculate how many more such weapons might exist in the Sol system, hidden from our sensors. I knew better than to bother with such calculations. If humans said they had a system full of doomsday devices, then they did. Their history was replete with examples of mutually assured destruction doctrines. They'd lived with the knowledge that they could annihilate their entire species at the push of a button for generations before we ever arrived. 58 minutes into our deadline, the response from Federation Central arrived. Remove the containment platforms, the Council's directive stated plainly. Establish preliminary diplomatic channels. Retreat to observation distance, and await diplomatic corps' arrival. Just like that, decades of Federation First Contact doctrine were tossed aside. The humans had forced our hand with nothing but salvage technology and sheer audacity. As our fleet began the humiliating process of dismantling the very containment grid we'd come to reinforce, I received a private communication request from the human vessel monitoring our compliance. Commander Tixil, General Volkov greeted me, his face filling my personal display. I requested to speak with you specifically. My surprise must have shown in my posture. You know who I am? We found the crew manifests in your moon base, he explained. You were the intelligence officer who studied us, yes? The one who filed all those fascinating reports about human behavior? I shifted uncomfortably. I was the first officer on the observation mission, yes. Volkov nodded thoughtfully. Your reports were quite thorough, particularly your assessments of our irrational aggression and suicidal determination. I wanted to thank you. Thank me? I was genuinely confused. Those reports convinced your Federation to implement containment rather than contact. And containment gave us exactly what we needed, a common enemy. Do you know what happened after your missiles detonated in empty space, Commander? For the first time in human history, every nation on Earth united behind a single purpose. Finding you. His smile returned, that predatory expression that raised my threat instincts. We redirected our entire global economy towards space. Ended conflicts that had persisted for generations. Poured resources into reverse engineering every scrap of alien technology we could find. You're saying we helped you? I realized with growing horror. Immeasurably, Volkov confirmed. Without the threat you posed, we might have taken centuries to achieve what we accomplished in 8 years. Nothing motivates humans like an external threat, Commander. I thought you, of all people, would understand that. I had no response. He was right. I had included that exact observation in my reports, but no one, myself included, had considered the implications. We'll be watching your diplomatic corps when they arrive, Volkov continued pleasantly. We're eager to join the Galactic community. On equal terms, of course. Of course, I echoed numbly. One more thing, Commander. His expression grew serious. Your reports mentioned that there are over 400 sentient species in the Federation? 412 catalogued spacefaring civilizations, I confirmed automatically. Fascinating. And how many of them were contained like us? Deemed too dangerous for contact? 3, I admitted. Now 4, with humanity. Volkov leaned closer to the camera. You should contact the other 3, warn them. Warn them? About what? His smile returned, colder than ever. About us, Commander. We're not going to forget what the Federation tried to do, and we don't take kindly to being caged. The communication ended, leaving me staring at a blank screen while ice formed in my veins. 3 days later, the diplomatic corps arrived. 6 months after that, humanity had its first embassy on the Federation capital world. 2 years later, human ships were a common sight in Federation space, their crude but effective technology gradually improving as they traded with other species. And I transferred to the diplomatic service. Someone needed to make sure the Federation understood exactly what they were dealing with. Someone who had seen firsthand what humans were capable of when challenged. Someone who knew this was just the beginning. "So that's it?" the young reporter asked, looking vaguely disappointed. "The humans bluffed their way into the Federation with salvage technology?" I clicked my mandibles in irritation. "Kid, you're missing the point. It wasn't a bluff. Every antimatter torpedo, every deadman switch, every threat was real. Humans don't bluff when it comes to existential threats. They overcome them, by any means necessary. But there was no actual war," he pressed. "No battles fought, no casualties." I stared at him for a long moment, then gestured to the bartender for yet another drink. The fighting came later, after I'd retired from active service, but I saw enough to know how it would go. The reporter's recording device hovered closer, sensing the shift in my pheromones. "You were involved in later conflicts with humans?" I chittered softly. "Involved? Kid, I was right in the middle of the nightmare. Let me tell you what happened after humanity joined the Federation. 5 cycles later, the Kree delegation categorically rejects humanity's petition for increased territorial rights in the Orion Spur," Ambassador Vist declared, his ceremonial plumage bristling with indignation. "Their expansion rate already exceeds all historical precedents. To grant them additional system claims would upset the balance of power established over 20,000 cycles." I watched from my advisory position as the human ambassador, Dr. Eliza Weir, maintained a posture of perfect diplomatic calm. This was her 3rd year representing Earth's interests, and I'd come to respect her surgical precision in these debates. "The Orion Spur has 17 habitable worlds that have remained unclaimed for over 500 years, she countered smoothly. "Federation Charter clearly states that unclaimed systems are open for development by any member species with the capability to establish sustainable colonies." "Capability that your species should not possess yet," hissed Vist. "Your technological advancement rate is unnatural. Destabilizing. No species progresses from planetary to multi-system civilization in a single generation." No species except humans, I thought but didn't say. My role as Federation diplomatic liaison was to maintain neutrality while providing context and historical precedent for the Council's deliberations. Dr. Weir smiled thinly. "Ambassador Vist, with all due respect, the Kree objection seems based not on Federation law, but on the fact that humans are developing faster than you find comfortable. That is not a valid basis for restricting our rights as Federation members." The council chamber hummed with the subvocal communications of a dozen different species. I could sense the tide turning in humanity's favor, as it increasingly did these days. Their arguments were always impeccably logical, grounded in Federation precedent, and delivered with a confidence that bordered on intimidation. "If I may, honored council," I interjected, following protocol. "There is precedent for accelerated expansion rights in the case of the Nzet Collective, Cycle 14-392. Their petition was granted based on their demonstrated ability to develop systems without resource depletion or indigenous species disruption." Dr. Weir nodded appreciatively in my direction. She knew I wasn't taking sides, merely providing relevant information, but the precedent clearly favored the human position. "The Nzetk were a known quantity," Vist objected. "Humans remain unpredictable, aggressive. Their history is stained with conflict. A history we've moved beyond," Dr. Weir responded firmly. "In the 5 years since joining the Federation, has Earth initiated a single conflict? Have human colonies disrupted any established trade routes or territories? Have we violated any provision of the Federation Charter?" The council chamber fell silent. She was right, of course. Humanity had been a model Federation member, on paper. But those of us who had studied them closely could see the patterns forming. Their colonies were positioned near strategic resources. Their diplomatic corps had forged alliances with species traditionally marginalized in Federation politics. Their commercial enterprises were undercutting established trade monopolies with more efficient processes. They were playing a longer game than most Federation species were accustomed to recognizing. "The petition will be put to vote," declared the Council Prime, a Tlaxian whose gas-filled body membrane rippled with the formal pigmentation of judicial authority. "All represented species will have 1 cycle to submit their position." As the chamber emptied, Dr. Weir approached me, her expression friendly but calculating. Humans always calculated, I'd learned, even in casual conversation. "Commander Tixil," she greeted me, using my military rank though I'd left active service years ago. "Thank you for citing that precedent." I wasn't familiar with the Enzatek case. "Just doing my job, Ambassador," I replied neutrally. "The Council relies on complete information." She studied me for a moment, her alien face impossible to read with its flat features and immobile exoskeleton. "Humans found us equally inscrutable, I knew. Our species' emotional expressions evolved in entirely different environments. "You don't like us much, do you, Commander?" she asked suddenly. The directness startled me. Federation diplomatic protocol discouraged such personal observations. "My feelings are irrelevant to council proceedings," I replied carefully. "But you have them," she pressed. "You were there at first contact. You saw how the Federation tried to contain us. And now you watch us take our place among the stars faster than anyone expected." I considered my response carefully. "I respect humanity's accomplishments," I said finally, "and I fear the consequences of your ambition." Rather than take offense, she laughed. A sound I'd come to recognize as genuine amusement rather than diplomatic courtesy. "At least you're honest. Most Federation species mask their concern behind procedural objections." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "For what it's worth, Commander, the aggressive expansionists are a minority among humans. Most of us just want security and prosperity, like any species." "I believe you," I said, and was surprised to realize I did. "But human history suggests that minorities with aggressive tendencies often determine your species' course." Her expression sobered. "Fair point. But remember, we're not the ones who fired first in this relationship." Before I could respond, her communication device chimed. She checked it, frowned slightly, and excused herself. I watched her go, wondering if her final comment had been a reminder or a warning. 3 days later, I understood it had been both. "Emergency session!" The Council Prime's announcement reverberated through my quarters, the automated alert overriding all privacy protocols. "All diplomatic liaisons report immediately." I arrived at the Council chamber to find it in chaos. Representatives from 24 species all vocalizing simultaneously in their native languages, while the translation matrices struggled to keep up. At the center of the chamber, a holographic display showed a star system I didn't immediately recognize. "What's happening?" I asked the nearest Federation security officer. "Pirates attacked a human colony transport," he explained tersely. "Humans responded with unprecedented force." The holographic display zoomed in to show the wreckage of what had once been a space station, now just scattered debris orbiting a small moon. Federation security markers identified it as Freeport Calaxia, a notorious haven for the pirate syndicates that operated in the less regulated sectors of Federation space. "The humans destroyed an entire station?" I asked incredulously. "After giving non-combatants 20 minutes to evacuate," the officer confirmed. "Apparently the pirates captured one of their colony's ships. Tried to ransom the passengers. The humans..." He paused, searching for the right word. "Objected." The Council Prime called for order, and the chamber gradually quieted. Dr. Weir stood at the petitioner's podium, her posture relaxed but alert. "Ambassador Weir," the Prime began, "you stand accused of conducting military operations without Council authorization. Freeport Calaxia was a recognized autonomous entity under Federation observation. Its destruction represents a severe breach of interstellar protocols." Dr. Weir nodded acknowledgement. "The United Earth Defense Force takes full responsibility for the neutralization of the pirate base known as Freeport Calaxia, following its unprovoked attack on the civilian colony ship Prosperity." "Neutralization," sputtered Ambassador Vist. "You vaporized a space station housing over 12,000 sentients." "After ensuring all non-combatants were evacuated," Dr. Weir corrected calmly. "The only casualties were the pirate crew who refused to surrender after attacking our vessel and murdering 17 of our citizens. The final death toll was 412 pirates, 0 civilians." "That is not the point." Vist's plumage was now fully extended in agitation. "The Federation Council has sole authority to authorize military action of this scale." Dr. Weir's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "With respect, Ambassador, Federation Charter Section 12, Paragraph 7, explicitly recognizes the right of member species to defend their citizens against imminent threat. The pirates had already executed hostages and threatened to kill more if their demands weren't met. The situation qualified as imminent threat by any reasonable standard. The response was disproportionate," argued a Valexian representative, their crystalline form vibrating with disapproval. "Was it?" Dr. Weir raised an eyebrow. "The pirate syndicate operating from Calaxia has attacked 78 Federation vessels in the past cycle alone, resulting in over 300 deaths and billions in economic damage. The Federation Security Council has debated action against them for over a decade with no resolution." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "Humanity simply solved a problem the Federation was unwilling to address." The Council chamber erupted again, dozens of species arguing simultaneously. I watched Dr. Weir carefully during the commotion. She stood perfectly still, So, let me get this straight, Admiral Kexthara said, his four eyes blinking in perfect asynchronous harmony while staring at the tactical display. You're telling me that this thing just obliterated our entire third fleet? Commander Veltar, whose species had evolved from something that looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a filing cabinet, clicked his mandibles nervously. Yes, sir. Complete annihilation in approximately 14 seconds. 14 seconds. 14.3 to be precise. The Admiral's secondary arms gestured at the holographic wreckage floating in space. Our third fleet, 347 vessels, including the flagship Inevitable Conquest. Gone. In 14 seconds. 14.3. I heard you the first time, Veltar. Now you might be wondering how we got here. How the mighty Korvani Empire, conquerors of 17 star systems and possessors of the galaxy's most aggressively named spacecraft, found themselves staring at what used to be their most prestigious battle fleet, now reduced to glowing debris and regret. Well, it all started with what the humans called Project Overkill, though in typical human fashion, they labeled it something completely boring in their official documents. Something like Deep Space Reconnaissance Initiative or Advanced Stellar Cartography Program. Because apparently, when humans are about to build something that could crack a planet in half, they name it after office supplies. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's rewind to about 6 months ago, when Captain Blake Morrison was having what he would later describe as the worst goddamn Tuesday of his military career. And this was a man who once had to explain to his commanding officer why his entire squad had gotten food poisoning from alien berries during a diplomatic mission. Morrison, get your ass in here! The voice belonged to General Patricia Hawkins, a woman who had risen through the ranks of Earth's Space Defense Corps by being approximately as subtle as a supernova and twice as destructive to her enemy's morale. Morrison had served under her for 3 years and had developed a healthy respect for her tactical genius and an even healthier fear of her vocabulary. You bellowed, General? Morrison said, sliding into her office with the practiced ease of someone who'd been summoned to many uncomfortable conversations. Don't get smart with me, Captain. I've got something that's either going to make your career or get you court-martialed. Possibly both. Morrison, who was 34 and had already survived 2 alien first contact scenarios, a black hole navigation incident, and General Hawkins's legendary Christmas parties, settled into the chair across from her desk. I'm listening. Good. Because what I'm about to tell you is so classified that the classification itself is classified. Hawkins pulled up a holographic display that showed what looked like a standard Earth-class destroyer. Meet the ESC Nemesis. Nice-looking ship, very destroyer-y. This is not a destroyer, Morrison. This is humanity's first attempt at reverse engineering alien technology we've acquired over the past decade. Acquired? Found lying around after their previous owners experienced sudden and terminal cases of thinking they could invade Earth. Morrison studied the display more carefully. The ship looked normal enough, standard human design philosophy, which could be summarized as, if it's not built like a brick shithouse, it's not built right. But there were subtle differences. The hull gleamed with an almost organic sheen, and the weapon arrays seemed to follow mathematical patterns that made his eyes water if he looked at them too long. What exactly are we talking about here, General? We're talking about a ship that, according to our engineers, should be able to punch through a standard battlecruiser's shields like they're made of tissue paper. We're talking about faster-than-light capabilities that make our current jump drives look like paddle boats. We're talking about enough firepower to level a small moon. And you want me to... I want you to take it for a test drive. There was a long pause. Morrison had learned, through painful experience, that when General Hawkins got that particular look in her eyes, the one that suggested she was either about to do something brilliant or something that would result in a very awkward conversation with Earth's insurance company, it was best to think very carefully before responding. General, with all due respect, shouldn't a test flight be handled by someone with, actual experience with alien technology? Morrison, you've been in more first contact situations than anyone else in the Corps. You've fought off 3 separate invasion attempts. You once successfully negotiated a peace treaty while dangling upside down from an alien torture device. That was more about survival than skill. And you've never lost a ship under your command. I've come close. Close doesn't count in horseshoes, hand grenades, or interstellar warfare. Hawkins leaned forward. Besides, the Nemesis isn't going to be flying solo. We're giving you the best crew we can assemble. How best are we talking? Lieutenant Commander Frank Kowalski as your XO. Best tactical officer in the fleet. Chief Engineer Maria Santos. She's the one who figured out how half this alien tech works in the first place. Navigation Officer David Kim. He can plot a jump course through a black hole's event horizon and still arrive on time. And Dr. Elena Vasquez for science officer. She's got 3 PhDs in xenobiology, theoretical physics, and what she calls creative problem solving. Morrison nodded slowly. Those were good names. People he'd trust with his life, which was apparently what he was about to do. What's the mission? Simple. Take the ship out for a shakedown cruise. Test the systems. See if it explodes. And if it does explode, try to aim it at something that deserves it. Now, this is where things get interesting. Because while Morrison was having this conversation, approximately 47 light-years away, Admiral Kexthera was having a very different kind of meeting. The humans have been quiet for too long, he said, addressing the assembled commanders of the Korvani Third Fleet. Intelligence suggests they're developing new technologies. With respect, Admiral, said Commander Yuldan, whose species looked like they'd been designed by a committee of particularly vindictive art students. Human technology is hardly a concern. They've only been spacefaring for what, 50 of their years? We've been conquering star systems since before their ancestors learned to make fire. That's exactly the kind of thinking that got the Zephyrians defeated, Kexthara replied. And the Crystalline Confederation, and the Void Hunters. The humans got lucky. 3 times? Lightning in a bottle. Admiral Kexthara's upper arms crossed while his lower arms gestured dismissively. Commander, I've studied every engagement the humans have been involved in. They don't fight like any species we've encountered. They don't follow established tactical doctrines. They seem to view warfare as a creative exercise. Meaning they do things that shouldn't work, which is precisely why they do work. They've turned improvisation into an art form. Kexthara activated a tactical display showing Earth's solar system. Intelligence suggests they're testing something new, something potentially dangerous. To us? To everyone. Back on Earth, Morrison was getting his first look at the Nemesis, and he had to admit it was impressive. The ship was about the size of a standard destroyer, but it moved with a grace that seemed almost alive. The hull's surface rippled with patterns of light that followed no earthly physics, and the engine signatures showed power readings that shouldn't have been possible with current human technology. She's beautiful, said Lieutenant Commander Kowalski, who had the kind of appreciation for destructive machinery that made him extremely good at his job and extremely worrying at parties. She's terrifying, corrected Chief Santos, running her hands over a control panel that seemed to respond to her touch before she'd even made contact. The power systems alone could probably supply a small city. The weapons. She trailed off, shaking her head. The weapons what? Morrison asked. The weapons are things that I'm pretty sure violate several laws of physics and at least 2 international treaties. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her sensor readings. The ship's computer systems are partially organic. They're actually learning from our interactions. It's like the ship is becoming more efficient every time we use it. Learning how? I'm not entirely certain, but I think it's incorporating alien neural network patterns. The ship is essentially thinking. Morrison absorbed this information with the kind of calm that comes from years of dealing with situations that would send most people screaming for the nearest exit. So we're flying a sentient weapon of mass destruction that's powered by technology we don't fully understand. That's accurate, yes. And we're taking it on a test flight. Also accurate? Well, what could possibly go wrong? Now, in the interest of fairness, I should mention that Morrison wasn't being entirely sarcastic. He'd learned that when dealing with alien technology, the best approach was to expect the worst and be pleasantly surprised if you only lost half your crew instead of everyone. The Nemesis launched from Earth's primary shipyard on a Tuesday morning, local time. The departure was kept quiet. No fanfare, no media coverage. Just a ship slipping away from Earth like a shadow departing at dawn. Morrison settled into the captain's chair, which seemed to adjust itself to his body in ways that were both comfortable and slightly disturbing. All stations report ready, Captain, Kowalski announced. Take us out, nice and easy, Morrison ordered. Let's see what this thing can do. What it could do, as it turned out, was everything their best ships could do, but better. The Nemesis moved through space with an efficiency that made their previous vessels look like they were swimming through molasses. The engines hummed with a sound that wasn't quite mechanical, wasn't quite organic, but somehow managed to be both reassuring and unsettling. Jump drive is ready, Captain, Kim reported. Coordinates laid in for the test range. Engage. The jump was smooth, smoother than anything Morrison had ever experienced. Instead of the usual violent transition that left everyone's stomach somewhere in the vicinity of their ankles, the Nemesis seemed to simply step sideways through reality. Jump complete, Kim announced, and Morrison could hear the awe in his voice. Transit time was... that can't be right. What can't be right? According to my calculations, we should have arrived 3 minutes ago. We arrived before we left? No, sir. We arrived exactly when we should have, but the jump time was negative. We somehow traveled faster than our own departure. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her console. The ship's temporal displacement systems are active. It's using some kind of space-time manipulation to enhance the jump drive efficiency. English, Doc. The ship is borrowing time from the future to make jumps faster in the present. Morrison stared at her. That doesn't sound legal. I'm not sure it's physically possible, but here we are. Wonderful. We're flying a ship that cheats at physics. This was when things got interesting. Because while the Nemesis was busy violating the fundamental laws of reality, Admiral Kexthara's Third Fleet was beginning its approach to Earth's outer system. Sensors detect the human test vessel, Commander Veltar reported. It appears to be conducting maneuvers in the asteroid belt. Excellent. We'll observe their capabilities and then eliminate them before they can return to Earth with their data. Sir, shouldn't we report this to High Command first? Veltar, we're talking about a single human vessel. Even if it's their most advanced ship, what possible threat could it pose to the Third Fleet? This, as it turned out, was what humans call famous last words. Meanwhile, aboard the Nemesis, Morrison was discovering that their test flight was about to become significantly more complicated. Captain, I'm reading multiple contacts on long-range sensors, Kim announced. Large formations approaching from Galactic North. How large? 300-plus vessels, sir. Configuration matches Korvani Imperial Navy. Morrison felt that familiar tightening in his chest that came with the realization that a routine mission was about to become decidedly non-routine. Red alert. All hands to battle stations. Sir, Kowalski said, should we withdraw? We're heavily outnumbered. Morrison looked around the bridge. His crew was professional, competent, and absolutely terrified, which was, in his experience, a healthy response to being outnumbered 300 to 1 by an alien armada. Dr. Vasquez, what's the ship's combat status? All systems are operating at peak efficiency. The weapons are enthusiastic. Enthusiastic? The ship seems excited about the prospect of combat. I'm reading neural activity patterns that suggest anticipation. The ship is looking forward to a fight? In a manner of speaking, yes. Morrison considered this. On one hand, they were facing overwhelming odds against a technologically advanced enemy. On the other hand, they were flying a ship that apparently wanted to fight and had weapons that violated physics. Kowalski, what's our tactical situation? Honestly, sir, I have no idea. The targeting systems are showing me options I didn't know existed. The ship is suggesting attack patterns that, well, they don't make sense, but the computer insists they'll work. Such as? Such as something it calls a temporal loop bombardment, and another one labeled dimensional ricochet. Morrison nodded slowly. Santos, can the ship handle whatever these weapons are going to do? Captain, this ship was built to handle things that would turn our best battleships into scrap metal. I think we're good. Kim, can you get us out of here if things go badly? Sir, with these engines, I can get us out of here before things go badly. Possibly before they even start going badly. Morrison looked at his crew. They were scared, but they were ready. They trusted him, and perhaps more importantly, they trusted each other. All right, people, let's see what this ship can do in a real fight. Admiral Kexthara was feeling confident as his fleet moved into attack formation. 347 ships, including some of the most advanced vessels in the Korvani Imperial Navy, against a single human test ship. The outcome was so predetermined that he was already composing his victory report. All ships, assume attack formation Theta 7, he commanded. We'll demonstrate the futility of human resistance. Sir, Veltar said, the human vessel is not withdrawing. It appears to be approaching us. Approaching? Yes, sir. Single ship moving directly toward our formation. Kexthara blinked his 4 eyes in sequence. They're attacking us? It would appear so, sir. One ship against our entire fleet? Yes, sir. Kexthara felt a familiar sensation, the same one he'd experienced when studying previous human engagements. It was the feeling of watching someone do something that was clearly impossible, while being absolutely certain they were about to succeed. All ships, open fire the moment that vessel comes within range. Aboard the Nemesis, Morrison watched the enemy fleet spread out before them like a metal constellation. Well, that's a lot of ships. Yes, sir, Kowalski agreed. On the bright side, we won't have trouble finding targets. I admire your optimism. Weapons status? All systems ready, Captain. The ship is eager. Dr. Vasquez? The ship's neural patterns are showing extreme excitement. I think it's been waiting for this. Morrison settled back in his command chair. All right, people, let's make history. What happened next would indeed make history, though probably not the kind that gets taught in schools. The Nemesis opened fire. Now, when most ships fire their weapons, what you get is a straightforward exchange of energy. You point your guns at the enemy, you pull the trigger, and hopefully something on their end explodes. Simple, elegant, effective. The Nemesis apparently felt this approach lacked creativity. The first weapon that fired was something the ship's computer called a phase-locked quantum disruption beam. What it actually did was reach across space-time, grab hold of the target ship's atomic structure, and convince it that existing was optional. The Korvani cruiser Predator's wrath simply ceased to be. Not destroyed, not exploded, just gone, as if it had never existed in the first place. What the hell was that? Morrison asked. I'm not sure, Kowalski replied, staring at his instruments in confusion. According to sensors, we didn't destroy that ship. We uninvented it? The second weapon was labeled Gravitational Cascade Amplifier. This one reached out, found the target ship's mass, and decided to multiply it by several thousand. The unfortunate cruiser. Inevitable victory suddenly found itself crushing itself under its own weight, compacting into a sphere approximately the size of a basketball before its engines finally gave up and it became a very small, very dense paperweight. Now that's just showing off, Morrison muttered. By the time the Nemesis had fired its third weapon, something called a temporal recursion cannon, that apparently shot the target ship backward in time until it crashed into its own past self. Admiral Kexthara was beginning to suspect that this engagement might not go according to plan. "Evasive maneuvers!" he shouted. "All ships, scatter formation!" But the Nemesis was just getting started. The fourth weapon created a localized black hole that consumed 6 ships before deciding it was full and politely dissipating. The fifth weapon turned a destroyer inside out, which was every bit as disturbing as it sounds. The sixth weapon somehow convinced an entire squadron that they were actually on the enemy's side, and they should probably start shooting at their own fleet. "This is impossible," Admiral Kexthara said, watching his tactical display update with increasingly creative forms of destruction. "No single ship can do this." "Sir," Veltar reported, his voice shaking. "We've lost 47 ships in the first minute of engagement." 47? 49 now, sir. That last weapon appears to have convinced 2 of our cruisers that they were actually antimatter. Morrison, meanwhile, was having the strangest combat experience of his career. "Santos, are we even controlling this thing?" "I don't think so, Captain. The ship seems to be selecting its own targets and weapons. We're just along for the ride. Kim, what's our status?" "Sir, we haven't taken a single hit. The ship is moving in patterns that, well, they shouldn't work. But every enemy shot is missing by exactly the margin it needs to miss by." "The ship is dodging?" "The ship is dancing, sir. It's like it knows where every shot is going to be before it's fired." Dr. Vasquez looked up from her console, eyes wide. "Captain, I'm reading massive neural activity from the ship's organic components. It's not just thinking. It's thinking in multiple dimensions. It's calculating probabilities across parallel timelines. English, Doc. The ship is cheating. It's looking at every possible future, picking the one where we win, and then making sure that's the timeline we end up in." Morrison absorbed this information with the kind of calm that comes from having given up on the universe making sense sometime around the third impossible weapon. "So we literally cannot lose this fight?" "Not as long as the ship wants to win. No." "And does the ship want to win?" "Captain, the ship is having the time of its life. I'm reading neural patterns that suggest it considers this the most fun it's ever had." By the 10th minute of combat, Admiral Kexthara's overwhelming force had been reduced to approximately half its original size, and the survivors were beginning to question their life choices. "Sir," Veltar reported, "Admiral Yulmore is requesting permission to withdraw." "Denied. We outnumber them still." "Admiral Zekthul is also requesting withdrawal." "Also denied." "Admiral Morkan has already withdrawn." "What?" "He jumped his entire battle group out of the system approximately 3 minutes ago. His last transmission was, and I quote, 'This is madness, and I refuse to be part of it.'" Kexthara watched another squadron of his ships get caught in something the human vessel was calling a probability storm. A weapon that apparently made it statistically inevitable that the targets would suffer catastrophic system failures. Maybe Morkan had the right idea. Meanwhile, the Nemesis was discovering new and exciting ways to violate the laws of physics, warfare, and good taste. Its 15th weapon had been something called a humor inversion beam that made the crew of an enemy destroyer laugh so hard they forgot to maintain their shields. The 16th had been a logic bomb that convinced a cruiser's computer systems that propulsion and life support were mutually exclusive concepts. "Captain," Kowalski said, "I'm not sure how to report this in the after-action report." "Why not?" "Because half of these weapons don't exist, and the other half shouldn't be possible." "Put down that the ship exceeded expectations." "By how much?" Morrison looked at the tactical display where the Korvani fleet was in full retreat. "All of them." The final straw for Admiral Kexthara came when the Nemesis deployed what its computer cheerfully labeled as a causality violation torpedo. This weapon traveled backward through time, hit its target before it was fired, and then returned to the present to explode again, creating a temporal paradox that somehow managed to destroy the same ship twice. "That's it," Kexthara announced. "All remaining ships, emergency jump. Get us out of here." "Sir, we're abandoning the mission?" "Veltar, we're abandoning the idea that this universe makes sense. Execute the jump. Now." The surviving ships of the Third Fleet, all 43 of them, jumped out of the system so fast they left scorch marks on space-time itself. Aboard the Nemesis, Morrison watched the last of the enemy ships disappear. Well, that was something. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez reported, "the ship's neural activity is returning to normal levels. I think it's satisfied." "It's satisfied?" "The neural patterns suggest contentment, like a cat that's just caught a very large mouse." Morrison nodded slowly. "Santos, damage report." "No damage, Captain. In fact, the ship seems to be in better condition than when we started. I think the combat actually improved its systems somehow." "Kowalski, casualty report." "No casualties, sir. No injuries." Chief Petty Officer Williams reports that the artificial gravity actually got more comfortable during the fight. "Kim, can you plot a course home?" "Already done, sir. The ship has provided me with 17 different routes, all of which will get us back to Earth before we finish this conversation." Morrison leaned back in his chair. "All right, people, let's go home." The journey back to Earth was considerably less eventful than the outbound trip, mostly because the Nemesis had apparently decided that it had proven its point and no longer needed to show off. The ship traveled at a reasonable speed, through normal space-time, without borrowing time from the future, or convincing any fundamental constants that they were optional. When they arrived at Earth's orbital shipyard, Morrison found General Hawkins waiting for them with an expression that somehow managed to combine pride, terror, and the kind of exhaustion that comes from explaining impossible things to skeptical superiors. "Morrison," she said, "I need you to tell me exactly what happened out there." "We encountered a Korvani fleet. We engaged them. We won." Morrison: "General? When you say won, what exactly do you mean?" Morrison considered this. "We destroyed or disabled 304 enemy vessels in approximately 14 minutes, took no casualties, sustained no damage, and sent the survivors running home to tell their friends that humanity is not to be messed with." Morrison: "Yes, General? Please tell me you're exaggerating. I'm really not." General Hawkins was quiet for a long moment. "The Korvani Empire has sent a formal request for a ceasefire." That was fast. "They transmitted it while you were still in combat. Their exact words were, 'We formally request an immediate cessation of hostilities with the human species, on the grounds that they have clearly gone insane, and we do not wish to find out what they will do next.'" Morrison smiled. "I think that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about us." "Morrison, what the hell did we build?" "I think, General, we built exactly what we needed to build. And that, more or less, is how humanity accidentally created the most terrifying weapons platform in the galaxy by trying to build a simple test ship. The Nemesis was quietly retired from active service and put into what the official reports called strategic reserve, which was military speak for locked in a vault somewhere until we figure out what to do with it." Morrison was promoted to admiral and given command of Earth's entire defense fleet, on the theory that anyone who could survive a fight like that without going insane was exactly the kind of person they wanted in charge when the next crisis arrived. The Korvani Empire, meanwhile, decided that maybe conquest wasn't such a great idea after all, and began focusing on peaceful trade and cultural exchange. Admiral Kexthara was quietly reassigned to a desk job in the Imperial Cartography Department, where the worst thing that could happen to him was a paper cut. Dr. Vasquez spent the next several months writing reports that nobody believed, and papers that nobody would publish, until she finally gave up and became a science fiction writer. Her first novel, The Ship That Thought It Was God, became a bestseller in 17 star systems. Chief Santos was promoted to head of the Alien Technology Integration Department, where she spent her days trying to figure out how their other captured alien devices worked, and her nights having nightmares about sentient weapons platforms. And the Nemesis? Well, the Nemesis sits in its secure facility, humming quietly to itself. Its organic neural networks dreaming digital dreams of the day. It convinced an entire alien fleet that maybe, just maybe, they should find a safer hobby than trying to conquer humanity. Because that's the thing about humans. We don't just fight. We improvise. We adapt. We build things that shouldn't work, and then we're surprised when they work better than they should. We're the species that looked at faster-than-light travel and said, you know what this needs? More cowbell. We're the ones who took alien technology designed for exploration and turned it into something that could delete enemy ships from reality. We're humanity, and we're just getting started. Epilogue. 6 months later, Admiral Morrison was in his office, reviewing fleet deployment reports, when his aide knocked on the door. Come in, Lieutenant. Sir, we've received a transmission from the Galactic Council. They're requesting a meeting to discuss, and I quote, the human problem. Morrison looked up from his reports. The human problem? Yes, sir. Apparently, since word of the Nemesis incident spread, 17 different species have petitioned for membership in the Terran Defense Alliance. They want us to protect them from other species who might want to invade them. And 11 other species have formally declared humanity a galactic threat and are demanding that we be quarantined to our own star system. Morrison leaned back in his chair. Lieutenant, what's your assessment of the situation? Sir, I think we've accidentally become the galaxy's biggest deterrent to interstellar warfare. Everyone's either too scared of us to fight each other or they want us on their side. And this is a problem how? Well, sir, the Galactic Council is concerned that we're disrupting the natural order of conquest and subjugation that's been the foundation of interstellar politics for the past 10,000 years. Morrison smiled. Lieutenant, send a reply to the Galactic Council. What should it say, sir? Tell them we'll be happy to discuss the human problem at their convenience. But mention that we'll be bringing the Nemesis to the meeting. Sir, the Nemesis is in secure storage. I know, but they don't. The lieutenant grinned. Yes, sir. I'll send that message right away. Morrison returned to his reports, humming quietly to himself. Outside his window, Earth's orbital shipyards were busy constructing the next generation of human starships. Vessels that would be faster, stronger, and considerably more creative than anything the galaxy had seen before. Because that's what humans do. We don't just build ships. We build possibilities. And the universe, for better or worse, is about to find out exactly what that means.